Thank you everyone for joining us. We have an exciting session lined up, and the best bit is it's going to be very short and to the point. Today is about the future of the ERP, and therefore it's about the future of operations for manufacturers and distributors. We've got a really exciting guests lined up. Now, myself and Sumit get to speak to a lot of manufacturing companies and a lot of MDs, and Nathan is probably the most enthusiastic about technology. He's an early adopter and he has a real love for engineering. Nathan, for the audience, could you please introduce yourself?
Certainly, and thank you. Yes, always excited about technology. So my name is Nathan Bailey. I'm Managing Director of Advanced Innovative Engineering, based in Lichfield in Staffordshire. So we design, develop, and manufacture Wankel-type rotor engines for autonomous applications, aerospace, and also land vehicles. AIE has been going for about 12 years now.
Brilliant, thanks Nathan. And from our side, we have myself and Sumit. And essentially, Kavita, we build AI agents using ERP data. So our agent PO is all built to help manufacturers and distributors ensure they never miss a critical order from suppliers. But you'll be hearing a little bit more about us later. So we're going to start off with what is the fundamental problem with the ERP as we know it. ERPs are a system of record. They're the pillar of software to document and digitize existing operations. And the diagram above shows in very basic terms how they work. You have your different modules in the ERP, and in those modules you build your workflows. And then all of the team members in that department will work off of those modules. Now, some of the key challenges we hear over and over again is one, there's a lot of siloed data that isn't easily accessible. A lot of manual time taken to update the data, and the inability to be able to give answers which interprets data from different modules because of the data is siloed. Nathan, what are some of the common challenges you've seen implementing and using an ERP? What's been your experience?
So I think echoing really your introduction there a little bit. So yeah, for sure, obviously getting data into ERP's packages can be time consuming sometimes, particularly if you're relying on manual entry or manual upload of documentation. Obviously that has a certain sort of admin aspect to it. But then also if you're loading data into specific areas of an ERP software, then actually being able to use that data broadly across the ERP package can also be challenging. So really, even though ERP tools, are fantastic, and I can remember at times when ERP wasn't so common, and believe me, they're a lot better than having no. They still can consume quite a lot of administrative time to maintain the data, enter the data, and then to actually access that data.
Brilliant, thanks Nathan. So the future of the ERP, we believe, is where the system of records that turns into essentially a back-end server, which is then connected into an AI, and then the AI is able to execute tasks. Now, what's really important is that users then end up speaking to the AI instead of the ERP and clicking through multiple screens to find very basic information. Now, why is all of this important? Well, I listened to an interview by one of the godfathers of the ERP himself, Larry Ellison. And this is a quote that I took out. If you want to take advantage of AI, you have to do two things. You have to do a good job of organizing your existing data, and then you have to pick the right AI tools. And I thought this summarized everything perfectly for manufacturers and distributors. Is your existing ERP is great at the former, doing a good job at organizing your existing data. And in fact, the core intellectual property of the ERP is actually the data structure on the back end, the thing that you don't get to see. But the value gets unlocked, or a significant amount of value gets unlocked from the ability of AI tools to read and actionalize the data. In other words, a lot of companies have done the hard work in putting in an ERP and getting staff members to update data, And now this piece where all the value is going to get unlocked is from the AI tools that are reading all of that data. So in our case, this is a very basic diagram. You have your ERP. The ERP is then connected into the AI, and the AI is running all of these language models. And from our side, the intellectual property is the layer of fine-tuning that happens on top of these language models. It's then able to execute actions internally with your teams or externally with your suppliers. And it can then update the ERP from all of those actions. So some good examples here is chasing up your suppliers for missing documents, in this case material certificates, in shipping documents, chasing up external stakeholders and then updating the ERP, but then helping with coordination internally with other departments, sending reports, finance reports, or sending a daily delivery date report, which is much more real time, to the warehousing team, or alerts to the production team and the inventory team about work orders that could be at risk. So this is how the modern AI agent works. And Nathan, would love to get your thoughts in here about how you see AI capabilities transforming ERPs and this broader trend of moving away from a system of records to much more system of actions. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely, and again, yeah, you're absolutely right. The key thing there is ERP system structures your data very effectively, and obviously controls it very effectively as well. But as per the previous question, the sort of the usage case, or the challenge with the usage case, comes around feeding that information in. So automating information into the system through sniffing emails, being triggered by keywords within emails or documents attachments, to allow you then to auto import and to attach those email communications or those documents to relevant areas within the ERP system to make them available is an extremely powerful tool. To do automatic follow-up on purchase orders or works order to due dates, automatic chasing using the variety of tools, including sort of messaging or emails. Again, extremely powerful without necessarily having to go within the ERP system and structure very rigid sort of workflows. And then from the other side, accessing that information. So having the ERP system, having the AI sitting over the top of the ERP system and then actually extracting data from that ERP system and then sending out information automatically to people who need it. These sort of activities would be fairly time consuming in a normal system. The AI obviously gives additional power or additional functionality on top of that sort of standard structure.
Brilliant, thanks Nathan. So now we're going to jump into a couple of very specific use cases, and in particular for aerospace. So now I'm going to create an agent. This is the process that I go through. This agent is going to be automating tasks, but at first I need to configure the agent. So I'm going to put in what are my key objectives. So increase OTIF to 95%, ensure all, let's say that's the objective, and let's say I want to also, let's say suppliers do not give material certificates on time. I'm configuring my agent based on my objectives and my challenges. What's happening is the agent is now going to recommend a suite of automations to address those specific problems that I have. So the first specific use case we're going to jump into is about document management. Nathan, could you share some of the challenges that you have, in particular for aerospace, about the stringent compliance requirements concerning documents for your purchasing teams?
Sure. So within an aerospace environment, whenever you order a component, there are a series of documents that would be required either on point of delivery or very soon afterwards to accompany the actual physical product to assure you of the conformity of that product to your requirements. So these take the form of normally a combination of sort of commercial and quality requirements, things like CFCs at a very basic level, delivery notes which can be combined together, inspection reports, first article reports, PPAP documentation, material certification, even things like heat treatment certification if the product has been heat treated. So we know with any given component that you order from your supply chain, there is this sort of suite of documentation that's required to support that component and allow you then to assure conformity to your requirement, to your customer, and obviously to yourselves, and then allow you to use that component within your assembly to then supply on to your customer.
Oh, Nathan, what's been the biggest challenge in managing, or the document management problem on a day-to-day basis? What's some of the issues? And then from your side, that's sitting much higher up top, what are some of the risks that come as a result of that? Some of the compliance risks that you're worried about when it comes to documents?
So first of all, if you start right at the beginning, automatically requesting the correct documentation from a supplier is challenge number one. So depending on the life cycle of the components that we're talking about, if it's the first time you've ever manufactured it, there are some unique documentation you required, first articles, etc., that you would, or PPAP reports that are required for that initial delivery that aren't necessarily required for further delivery. So understanding, is this the first time this component's been manufactured, or is this the first time this supplier's manufactured it, and then allocating the appropriate requirements with regards to documentation to that purchase order, so the supplier understands the documentation they have to supply. That's sort of stage one. The second stage then is, once the component has been manufactured and obviously the supplier is looking to send it into you, is to ensure that they supply some documentation up front before delivery, such as some of the certifications and inspection documents, to allow you to assess that the component is correct before the supplier delivers. Now, chasing that documentation up or having automated trigger points within that communication with your supplier to alert them to the fact that this documentation is required, or remind them that this documentation is required, is very key. Otherwise, you do spend a huge amount of time chasing that documentation up, or even in some cases the supplier will deliver a component without the documentation, at which point it pretty much goes on hold, and therefore you have inventory on site that you can't use because it hasn't got the relevant documentation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nathan. So documentation management, in particular for the aerospace sector, was a prime example where intelligent automations can solve a large part of the problem. This is how this use case, this agentic use case on top of ERP data works. The agent integrates with the ERP. It's then able to dynamically understand what documents are required for every PO. And because it's integrated in with your Outlook or Gmail as well, it can then start coordinating with the supplier on your behalf and chase up those documents. And then the final step is we've got to get those documents back into the ERP. So this was a really good example of intelligent automations to try and solve this issue. In practice, this is what it looks like. So if there's a missing document, you'll receive an alert both on Microsoft Teams and email. And the AI is chasing these documents. You can see that there's 2 documents missing inside the platform. And then there's an automated message that chases up the supplier. So alert, missing documents, an automated message that goes out from the inbox of the buyer to chase up that document. And the supplier on the other side doesn't know that they're speaking to an AI. In that instant, they think they're speaking to a real person. Now, what's really important, what we found is our last version of the product used to use supplier portals, and that created supplier adoption challenges. They weren't uploading documents onto portals, but now, because of the breakthroughs in AIs, we're able to request all of these documents and manage them directly on email. So, Nathan, what are some of the benefits that you've seen, or anything you'd add on the intelligent documentation management before we move on to the next use case?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's building on what you just said. So obviously, yeah, the availability of documentation has increased since we started using the platform. We are finding that suppliers are more responsive. They are moving more from sending paper documentation with the component itself. So therefore, we then have to scan it in ourselves and attach it to the system, to actually emailing that documentation, because they're being chased via email and requesting the documentation via email. Again, that saves a huge amount of administration on our side. We're also seeing that the documentation is being supplied up front, as opposed to historically, as I say, you get the component with a pack of paper documentation that you then have to interpret, look through and scan, etc. So I think it's just really streamlining that front end and that sort of document management side as seeing great benefits from our perspective. It used to be a very big administrative task, and that's been greatly reduced.
Brilliant. Now, Nathan, let's talk about the wider impact it's had across the company, not documents, but the ability to query your ERP using natural language. As you are rolling out an ERP, Nathan, what are some of the common challenges you've noticed in the interactions between, say, purchasing and other departments when it comes to accessing data on an ERP, and then how has a natural language layer helped?
So I think with most traditional ERP packages, you obviously have a series of screens that you have to navigate to access your data or to enter data into the system. So that's sort of typically a sort of data entry screen, query screen, report screen that actually you have to give individuals access to in order to access certain information within that ERP. So you have a situation, for instance, that the purchasing data is contained within a module, purchasing module, and the purchasing team have access to the purchasing module, but then the shop floor manufacturing team don't have access to that purchasing module. Typically you'd say, well, why do they need access? That's the traditional thinking. Well, when you're working in a very integrated business, actually having this information available to different teams within the business without having to go through at a very granular level to give screen access, certain screen access to certain individuals, unlocks your ability to use your own data. So for instance, if you have somebody, in our case, assembling an engine, and they're short of a component or a component needs to be replaced, instead of going to the purchasing team or the material handling team and saying, do we have a replacement, is the one coming in, you can simply query the AI copilot using plain language, ask it the question, do we have any more of these in stock? If not, you can ask the follow-on question, which is, are any more of these on order? And they get that information immediately without having to go to those individual departments and having to, absorb their time in asking those questions. So that's massive. It also gives people a feeling that they're more integrated within the business, because fundamentally that data is your data. Within the company, all this data within that database, the ERP software is the company's data. So anything that allows you to access that data in a freer way, and for it to be utilized by a broader spectrum of people within the business can only be good.
Brilliant, thanks Nathan. So now I'm going to pass it on to Sumit. He's just going to walk us through some of the Copilot applications. And Sumit's been working closely with Nathan's team, but also other manufacturers. So he's got a really good understanding on how a lot of value can be created through other use cases of natural language query.
Thanks for that, Anand. So I think the point that Nathan mentioned, that each member within your organization has access to ERP data by just using natural language. We found that that's one of the most powerful use cases when it comes to manufacturing. So for example, if you look at people on the shop floor, all they have to do is they would come in, they would have access to a copilot, which is basically a layer of AI that's running on top of your ERP data. And all they need to do is come in and ask questions about information that they need. So most basic question that people in the shop floor might want to ask is, what is the status of my work orders? So just come in, ask this question, and you will get a response like this. So what the agent is doing right now, it's going through all the ERP data, it's going through the work orders, it's going through any linked data to those work orders, and it's collecting all that information out. So instead of you having to navigate a lot of screens within the ERP, all you're doing is just coming in and asking this question. And all the relevant information that is needed, in which are in completed, which are cancelled, which are in progress, you get all of that information. You actually also get what quantities are there, which parts are required, what other details are there. So all of that information, which would have taken a lot of time for you to query from the ERP to use different screens and get it, is now reduced to just one question. And the best part is that after asking a question like this, you can also ask a question in terms of what you need to do as next steps. So one of the main things you want to ensure is that you have all the raw materials that you need to complete the work orders. You can just ask a question like, which items need new orders? So again, what this is doing, it's analyzing your work orders, If you're, let's say, industry that's driven by forecasting, then it's analyzing your forecasts, it's analyzing your current stock, and then combining all of that information up there to give you exactly what items you should order. So previously, to do something like this, you would have to first go to the sales team, get your forecast. You would have to go to the production team, see which work orders you have active. You may have to check with warehousing to see to see you might have to check with warehousing to see which of the items actually are out of stock. But you can actually ask just this question and get an answer there.
I think if I can just come in there as well, I think the power is it's not just that initial question; it's the ability to drill down further from that initial question as well. So, I think as we've spoken about before, the copilot allows you to be more conversational with your own data. So typically when you're querying an ERP software, you run a query based on some parameters that you've set within the query, and you get that answer. But then as soon as you want to look at something further, you have to go to another screen, or you have to alter your query and rerun the query. With the copilot and with this sort of natural language interface, you ask an initial question, you get an answer. You then ask a follow-on question, you drill down further into the data. And this sort of conversational approach to your data is really, really powerful, because it's like having it literally is like having a conversation with somebody in the business. But instead of just being able to talk to the buyer at one time, and then, as you say, the quality guy in another time, you're talking to all of the data at the same time. So it really is a massive benefit.
Yeah, I think so. That's one of the use cases. The other use cases where an agent is very powerful is, for example, helping you visualize helping you visualize all the information that you have in terms of your suppliers, your shipments, and combining that with external data. So usually ERPs are very limited to the data that is within the organization. What an agent is capable of is combining data externally regarding risks, regarding real-time events, regarding shipping data using satellite imaging, and putting it all together. So you can just come in and ask a question like, plot your current risks, suppliers, and active shipments on a world map, and also include suppliers for active orders. What this is doing, it's taking internal data about your suppliers and active orders, and it's combining that with all the real-time risks that are happening currently across the world that can in some way impact your operations, and then plotting all of that for you. So you know exactly which supplier do you have, you know exactly what kind of risks are there nearby. For example, there are ports that are threatened just near a supplier. So this has some risk in you being actually impacted, or some of the orders that are currently active with this supplier being delayed because of the risk that's been detected next to the supplier. So this is another use case where what the agent is doing is it's linking the ERP, which is internal, to all of this external information across risks, shipping, and all of that. The third very high value use cases that the agent helps with is that most of the time you have projects within the organization, like inventory optimization project or a profitability analysis project. And what you do there is that you task a team with some resources that I want to reduce my inventory, go and collect information for me. So how you would approach is that the person would go request the IT team to construct complex queries, get that information up, you would analyze all of that. And usually is a 3 to 4 week process involving 2 to 3 people, which takes a lot of time to actually come to the insights. What the agent does is, because it has cross departmental access to all of the data sources, you can just come in and ask a question to solve that issue. For example, if the issue was about inventory and how do you optimize that, the question that you will ask is just show me the products and the corresponding raw materials that have high usage based on work orders and which have low usage. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to understand where all my inventory can be optimized, maybe in reducing stock and increasing stock. And this is what the agent would give you as an answer. So the first thing it's given is that which materials have which raw materials have high usage but have very low sales. So this is basically that you're much more probable that these materials will run out of stock because these products have very high sales numbers and low usage. So there's a high probability that will run out of stock. The second category is put it in is raw material usage but high sales and forecast. So again, this is identifying those key raw materials that are eventually higher in stock for you and are essentially taking in much more inventory space than they normally would have. So it's putting all of the operations that you have, it's combining sales, forecast, your current inventory, and your raw material usage, and then it's recommending you everything. So everything which have high raw material usage, which are basically high probability of stock out, low raw material usage, which is basically things that you should reduce your inventory stock, and then it's recommending you that which ones actually need adjustments. So which sales numbers have to be changed, which forecast numbers have to be changed, so that if you change them, then this will flow through the organization in helping you reduce your inventory, helping you get better at manufacturing and fulfilling the demand there. These are some of the high value strategic use cases that you can use the Copilot for, which essentially require you to integrate data across various departments, analyze them using complex queries, and then use that to inform future decision making.